every month, A Life Simply Lived Psychology from Board. So get in touch with them. You can always make an appointment through them. And we've had a few users coming in that are co-working, people that maybe live in Melbourne and can't go back there for obvious reasons. And just we've had a lot of random hires of people that need to have meetings or staff functions and things like that. So keep the bookings coming. It's a fantastic facility, and let us know if you want to have a tour of it or anything like that. Oh, that sounds good now. Oh, thanks, Jude. I do appreciate it. So if you are watching like Jude is today, please say hi. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us what the low was overnight because, yeah, it's been a bit of a frosty old day here in Cohuna. And with Cohuna Co, don't forget you can always get in touch with us about any IT questions. Dan's the actual IT expert, but I can help with little things like teaching you how to use Zoom if that's something that's coming on your radar at the moment, because there are a lot of Zoom webinars and meetings that people are doing at the moment. All right, Shan's told me that it sounds better, so that's always good. Got 7 people watching, so hi everyone. All right, without further ado, I will introduce Dan, or I'll let him introduce himself actually, but I'll add him to the stream. There he is. Hi Dan, how you going?
How are you going? Good, how are you?
Good. All right, we've got your sound working, so that's always a bonus. All right, well, I'll let you introduce yourself and then introduce Stubberfield Group IT if you'd like.
Okay, so for everyone that doesn't know me, my name's Dan. I run Stubberfield Group IT over in Echuca over here, but we look after a fair few clients over in Cohuna and Barham, so we're over that way quite a bit. And one of the key areas that we sort of focus on is cyber security and cybercrime to make sure businesses are protected against all the nasty stuff that's out there, making sure your systems are set up and secure so we can minimise that threat as much as possible for people, as well as we're a managed service provider who does IT support for small to medium business, but we do home users as well, and we do large enterprise as well.
Fantastic. So you're covering all bases there, and you've already got some existing clients over this way, as you mentioned. And yeah, we've built up our relationship with the Stantons and ASM being clients as well. So you're always there, right there to help us with our advice. We might tell a story about my little hacking experience last year later on, but and you're pretty good at this live thing because in the past you've also done your Friday lives and had guest speakers on and everything. So people can go and have a look at the Stubberfield Group IT Facebook and website, and you've got a special client group as well. So that's really good. So what's happening in the industry? Like, I know you focus on businesses a little bit too, but some of the things we talk about today are going to be good for people who are watching, individuals, to also know how they can keep themselves safe and just what to watch out for. What are you seeing is one of the most common things that's happening at the moment, Dan?
So cybercrime has really evolved this year in that it officially at the start of 2020 became a $1 trillion industry, and it's evolved from a hacker sitting in his bedroom on a computer somewhere in the world to highly sophisticated crime organisations that are building cybercrime units. We actually, at the start of the year, found a job advertised on the dark web for a basic programming person to be involved in a cybercrime group.
Wow.
And the starting wage for that was $10,000 a week paid in cryptocurrency. So it's tax-free, it's untraceable. And so when you're offering up that sort of money for the type of job that it is, you're dealing with a whole new set of skill sets, because someone that's obviously worth, and that's the starting wage. They actually had a job that went up as high as $75,000 a week.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
We're now seeing there's actually a market. They've converted it to a business model now. So there's actually a site on the dark web where you can go. So we have like Office 365, so that's software as a service, we call that within the industry. So now we're seeing what they call ransomware as a service, where you can go to a site, you pay a $500 joining fee, and they basically provide you all the tools to commit cybercrime against businesses, and they take a 30% cut of all the money that you make.
Wow.
Evolving from that basic thing that it once was into a highly sophisticated platform that they're utilising to attack businesses.
Yeah, okay. So it's probably bigger than a lot of us realise. And there's probably a lot of fear around it, but also that's what we're here for today to discuss, is the simple things that people can actually do to avoid this or to be aware of it. I guess it's something that's not going to go away. I'm sure it's very hard to police. I'm sure it's very hard to prosecute. It's an international thing. Like you said, there's all the things around cryptocurrency. So, it's not something that's going to go away, especially if it's such a lucrative industry by the sound of it. So as consumers and people using the internet, that's not going to go away either. So we're going to have to just learn it, educate ourselves and become aware about how we can keep ourselves safe. I guess that's
correct. So for any end users that might be on the call, anyone that uses Gmail, Outlook.com, Hotmail, for example, any of those sort of free email-based platforms, they're quite easy to breach. And one of the settings that they have under the security settings is what we call two-factor authentication, where you can actually link your mobile phone number to that account, so that if I have your credentials and try and log into your account from a browser that's unknown, it'll actually prompt and ask for a code that gets generated and sent to your phone. So without that code, I can't get into your account. So a hacker in that aspect would get hit with a two-factor authentication code, basically delete your details and then move on to the next one.
Okay.
And go through it. The databases online now, you can buy 15,000 breached user credentials for as low as $3.
Right. Okay. So that's an important thing that people can look for on their own email address, is whether or not it's got two-factor authentication. It's just a simple setting to sort of find somewhere in email addresses. Okay. Even Gmail and Hotmail have that.
Yep. So if you've got Gmail, there's a little cog that sits up in the corner when you log into Gmail. If you click on that, one of the options under that is your settings, and you can go through and set up that two-factor authentication. For any new accounts now, Gmail actually forces you to turn on two-factor authentication when you set it up. But if you've set it up a while ago, there's a good chance that it doesn't have two-factor authentication set up by default.
Excellent tip. So that's tip number one, people. Find out, and that will protect yourself. I'm going to tell a little story now, which is probably what has motivated me to want to talk to you today, even though you were on my radar, of course. And I've had a friend who's had a very bad experience in the last week or so, where she's been scammed a significant amount of money through no fault of her own. She was paying a bill to a local builder where she lives, not in Cohuna area, and she thought she paid the money, which she had, and then the builder called her and said, we haven't received the money. Eventually, after lots of phone calls and trying to work it out, found out that what they think's happened is that the builder's invoice has been intercepted and the account details have been changed. So my friend has actually paid the money into a hacker's account. Does that sound like something that happens a little bit? Have you heard of that sort of thing?
That happens a lot. And in that instance, the email wouldn't have been intercepted. That builder's email account would have been breached. And then basically, as a hacker, if I breach your account, I can create some rules in the background that basically filters email from certain senders into a folder that you won't see. And then as a result of that, I can then start to converse back and forth with your client as you, and then say, we have got a new bank account or whatnot. And an example of that was about 2 weeks ago when I got a call from somebody here in Echuca. Their Office 365 had been set up by somebody else and they didn't have any of the security set up properly. And the hacker was in negotiation with a law firm for a payment of $300,000 for a property settlement. And the only reason they picked up that something was awry was the email from the hacker sent to the law firm actually said, oh, by the way, our bank is doing our yearly audition of our bank account. Therefore, can you pay the $300,000 into this bank account? And they gave them bank account details for an ING bank account in Sydney. And it was only because they used the word audition that the lawyer flagged it and actually picked up the phone and rang them and said, hey, is this correct? Because, you've said audition instead of audit. And that's when they've realised someone was in the account. Wow. And so then when we drilled in on the back end, that's when we found all the rules that the hacker had created so that the email flow goes somewhere else and they can't actually see what's going on.
Wow.
That is very common. The industry is saying now that if someone breaches your system, it's not like the old days where they'll get in and get out. They've had instances where companies have been hacked and they sit in the background for 8 months where they've just watched what's going on. They've been reading emails and then figuring out how to target their attack so they can maximise the payload once they attack.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? I think this is a bit bigger than we thought. And so that's what happened to me last year. I think with my Stanton's email is that I apparently sent out an email with a dodgy link on it to over 1,000 people. And then luckily people were writing back to me going, is this right? This seems strange. Why have you sent this to me? And while I was receiving all those hundreds of phone calls from the lovely people, I could see the hacker writing back to people on my screen. So although it wasn't anything to do with money, that was more of a link sort of thing, wasn't it? But it was just so...
Yeah, that would have been what we call a farming attempt. So people would have got that link and then they would have clicked on it and would have taken them to a page that says enter your email address and password, and then they would have used that to farm those details to try and breach more accounts.
Yeah.
It's traditionally what happens in that aspect, yeah.
It was a horrible feeling, and I know what kind of my friends gone through as well. I didn't lose any money, but just the feeling that, someone thinks they've got the right to do that to you. And I was worried about the impacts on all my customers and clients, and I didn't want to spread any viruses or anything to their systems and have it all perpetuated. So it was great that you could jump in and help with that too. So I guess we've talked about a couple of things that people can do. Another thing perhaps is, anything that looks dodgy, bad spelling, bad grammar, pixelated.
Always the email address of where it's come from is another common one, because it's very easy to have an email say Amy from Stanton's, but the email address be something completely different. So the red flags are always to check the sender's email address to make sure it matches up. If they're requesting a payment for bank account changes, always call to confirm whether or not that's correct.
Yeah.
And then just check, even if it does look legitimate, but you've got some concerns, always make sure you pick up the phone and just ring and say, did you send this? Is this legitimate?
Yeah.
Because it's happening more and more this year.
Yeah, I definitely think
that's a real big increase.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of eyes on online. There's a lot of action online at the moment, and people have, instead of walking into a shop and paying, they may be using the bank account details and using emails as invoices and things like that. So there's a huge opportunity there to make money from the hackers' point of view.
Correct.
So,
we yesterday was the same example with what happened to Twitter. Twitter got hacked. They put up posts saying, they hacked high-profile accounts saying deposit $1,000 or deposit money in a Bitcoin account and we'll match that amount and give it back to you, so that happened yesterday. LinkedIn's becoming another one that they're actually utilising the same trick. So I met with a guy last Friday who was approached by a woman on LinkedIn who connected with him on LinkedIn and then went on to say that she was a Bitcoin investor, and if he was to set up a Bitcoin wallet and send her money, she would be able to invest it on his behalf, double his money and send it back to him.
Wow.
So there's a lot of different angles that they're working now, and it's just about being vigilant and doing your due diligence before you pay anything and making sure that you're reading the emails correctly.
Yeah, if anything sounds dodgy, like that sounds a little bit too good to be true, like anything in life, it pays to do the background information and just take that little extra step, make a phone call, ask some questions, and just do some checking before you sort of jump into anything. And it seems silly, like you think, how could someone get sucked into that? And like the romance scams, you think, how can they get sucked in? But the hackers and the scammers are professionals and they have a lot to gain from this. So they're very motivated. They can groom people, and they can, like the invoice that my friend received was identical to what the builder had sent her, except for the bank account details. So, and then, so it's so easy to get trapped, and there's probably not much she could have done in that situation, but she did want us to talk about it today to just bring this to people's attention, and not to get fearful, but just to, remember what sort of world we're living in, unfortunately, sometimes at the moment, and just to do that double checking, be aware, educate yourself about all the different types of cybercrime that are happening, and also maybe don't assume it won't happen to you. And if you're in a business, it's really important not to assume it's only going to happen to big businesses like Twitter, or big businesses like, Target or anything like that. What are the stats around, people that experience, or businesses that experience cybercrime?
It depends on the level of attack. We saw a fundamental shift at the start of the year where they've moved away from, traditionally what they would do is they would breach your system, run ransomware, which would basically encrypt all your files so you couldn't open them. And then it would send you a message and say, you need to pay us this amount of money to recover your data. And if you didn't have the money, and if you didn't have a proper backup, there was just no way to recover that data, and it was just gone. We've actually saw a fundamental shift when Toll got hacked the second time this year, because I think they got hacked in February, and they got hacked in about May, I think it was, April, May. The second time they got hacked, they didn't actually encrypt anything the second time. They did the first time. The second time, they actually took a copy of their data and said, you need to pay us, or we're going to start publishing this information online for everyone to be able to see.
Wow.
Now, you can imagine if you were an insurance broker, or if you're a law firm, or if you're in anything that's got highly sensitive data, that's the shift that they're making, because they're starting to realise that with the tech, as the technology for backup evolves, you can get around a ransomware attack quite easily and recover from that. Whereas if your data's been stolen and threatened to be published online, that can have a very detrimental effect in terms of business reputation and trust with clients, and you could potentially lose clients that you'll never get back again because of that.
Exactly. So they're very educated about, the pain points of businesses, and they're modelling their business and on that, aren't they, really?
They are, yep, correct. So that's been pretty massive in the US, especially when it comes to medical. They've been going after a lot of doctors' surgeries, and from the reports that I've read, a lot of medical facilities have actually just basically gone bankrupt, because once they've been breached and that data's gone, they can't recover from it.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is just, I hope it's interesting to people, and I hope people are learning a little bit more about it, whether you're a business person or an individual, because you go.
I was going to say, we touched on it a little bit just before. You mentioned romance scams, and I just wanted to share a story, because I actually met a victim of that a couple of weeks ago. It's the first time I've actually ever met a victim of that. But just to show that it's not big business, but you can still have major losses, in the space of 2 weeks, the gentleman that I met was fleeced out of $5,000. Now, he's gone to the bank and he's reported it, and they're investigating it to see if he can get his money back. But there would be a lot of those cases where people would be very embarrassed to tell anyone, and not necessarily report that they've done that and they've given someone $5,000, because when you come from the outside looking in, and this person's sitting here saying, I'm stuck in this country and I need to pay the border $2,000, can you send me $2,000 and I'll pay you when I get back, sort of thing. As you say, when you're in a vulnerable situation, it's easy to fall for that. And so it's not big business, it's SMBs. SMBs have become the core target for cybercrime worldwide now, not just in Australia.
They're probably less likely to have maybe the correct or the really most robust security systems in place, and also the knowledge about how to protect it. And something I was reading about this morning when I was preparing for this was how important it is to educate your staff. So you might know a lot about, your security and the common things that you need to do to protect yourself. Don't click on links, don't open emails that you're not sure of, don't transfer money unless you actually physically talk to the boss, things like that. But you're then relying on human error, and that's what the hackers ultimately rely on, I suppose, human error and people not being diligent about it, and probably not knowing what the new forms of cybercrime are as well. So it's important for employers to have a good IT service provider and a system that you trust, but also keep educating yourself and then pass that on to your staff members as well.
Well, not only that, and one of the new things that we now have access to that we've got in the last month is a platform called Bullfish that we can now offer to clients, which basically sets it up so that we will send your staff fake phishing emails, and that tracks who opens the email, who clicks on a link. If they click on a link, do they put in user details on the fake page that it takes them? And then the platform actually provides training to them. So it sends them an email that says, you've been phished. This is where you went wrong. Here's a quick training video on what you need to know for the future. And then they can't actually go past it until they correctly answer all the questions at the end of the video. So they're forced to actually watch the whole video to educate themselves to make sure that they don't do it again.
That is a great idea, because I'm sure if you went around and asked people in your office or your organisation, do you ever open emails, that you don't know who they're from, they'd be like, no, I wouldn't do that. But I think we've all done it, whether it be on our personal email or our work email. Sometimes you click before you think, oh, that doesn't seem a bit right. And but it can be critical when you're in a work situation or in a personal situation too. So that's great. And you'd be surprised how people might not know how easily things can happen to them. Credit card details should be held very close to your chest and not emailed or written on a bit of paper for someone to keep in their office. That's a really simple thing. But you'd be surprised. I'll probably experience weekly clients and people I know emailing me their credit card details. So, for people out there, don't do that. We had to fill out a thing at a surgeon. Shannon had to have surgery, and we had to fill out a form to get him booked in for the surgery, and they wanted us to write our credit card details on the bottom of it. Now, that was just going to get chucked on the receptionist's desk and then scanned in, I guess, and filed forever. And I wasn't, prepared to leave my credit card details there for the world to see. So things like that, just people be careful about little things like that. And even passwords. What's the most common mistake with passwords, do you reckon, Dan?
People use traditionally, and this is why we see a lot of breach now, is traditionally as a standard user, you'll have about 3 passwords that you use for everything, and you might cycle between those, or you might make slow variations on those. But traditionally, it's 3 different words maximum that most people have that they cycle between. And Microsoft's industry recommendation now is that you don't your password shouldn't be set to expire, and you should use a 3-word phrase that's meaningful for you. Okay. So it would be 3 words with some special characters and maybe a number in there that's relevant to you, but it's something that's only going to be relevant to you. It's not going to make any sense to me, and it's not going to be easy to hack. Now, when you go into a 3-word phrase, we're talking 16 to 25 characters in the end. It's very hard to break a 16 to 25 character password quickly. I've had clients before that I say, what's your password? And it's 8 characters, and it might be 4 letters and 4 numbers. And we've done the tests. You can put a password like that through a password generator, and in roughly 50 seconds, I can get 10,000 variations on what that password could be that we can then pump into a system that basically just sits there and cycles through every password until we get one that works.
So people need to change all their passwords, make them a little bit more complex, like you said. And you can, because it does, we're all the same. Like I said, I put my hand up. I've got variations of pretty much the same old password. And I think a lot of people will be guilty of that, if that's what you could say. But there's apps and things that you can use to keep your passwords.
Yes. So for anyone that's watching, there's a program that you can get called LastPass, which basically adds itself into your Chrome browser, and you can store all your usernames and passwords within LastPass for different sites. And if you go to a site, it will actually check your LastPass database to say, you know, we're at this site, have we got a record in the LastPass database for this? And then you can click one button and it pre-fills the username and password for you, so you don't have to remember it. So my MyOb login, for example, my password to log into MyOb is 26 random characters. There's no way I could ever remember what it is. If you actually asked me what it is, I would not know. But through LastPass, I can log into MyOb. I just click the button, it auto-fills it for me, and I know that I've got a nice secure password. So you can use that sort of thing. Touching on that, any home users, when you do go online and you fill in the credit card details to buy something online, and it pops up in the bottom, in the top right corner, and it says, do you want to store these credit card details in Chrome to make it easier for next time? If you get hacked, it's actually very easy to retrieve the data that Chrome stores within the browser, and then we've got your credit card details ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good tip as well, because that's very tempting to do. You know, it's just, it pops up right there and you just click yes, and then your credit card details are stored in there. So that's definitely something to avoid. Well, we've covered a lot today. And, you know, hopefully some of the hints have helped people, but I'm sure they can always get in touch with you. And something, because my brain's always thinking of ideas and things, something I've thought about is, do you offer like a cybersecurity audit where you could talk to people or businesses and come in and sort of just see what they've got in place and make recommendations based on that? Is that some type of service that you would
Yep, we can certainly do that. One of the other things that we can also do if someone's looking for something on the fly, we actually have a tool now to search the dark web for stolen user credentials. So, for example, if you've got a business domain, which might be johndoe.com.au, we can actually run that domain through our checker, and it will tell us if there's any user details on the dark web for sale for your particular domain. 99% of the time that actually will come back with an email address and a password, so we can say, and I've sat in rooms with people and said, do these look familiar? One in particular, the guy looked at the list and he said, that's our CEO, that's our CFO, and that's our acting CFO, and all three emails and passwords were current. So wow. That's how easy it is. But we can run checks like that, so we can tell you if there's anything that you need to be thinking about of going to change. And that's a quick thing. We can do that in 5 minutes, but then we can also do that more in-depth look at your systems to make sure that you've got the correct security in place to make sure you are protected and mitigate your risk as much as possible.
Because as we've seen today, it's something that needs to be updated regularly. I'm sure no point, you know, installing your computer system 2 years ago and thinking that it's actually protecting you adequately at the moment, because things just evolve and change as they go. So I'll put all the links to get in touch with you, Dan, because I think it's really important. And you're on top of all of this stuff, which is amazing. And hopefully we're talking together about possibly having you come to Cohuna regularly, maybe even to Cohuna Co, so that businesses or individuals can pop in and see you with their IT questions. They don't have to be cybersecurity related. They could be system related, or if you need something fixed with your laptop. So we're working on that, aren't we? And hopefully we are. Have something in place in the next 6 months maybe. So if you're interested in that, people, let us know, because we're trying to work out if there is a demand for it. So yeah, that's something pretty exciting. And Dan's part of Cohuna Co Collective too, so I'm very grateful for his support, and he's been very helpful for a lot of our members in our closed private group that we've got. If anyone's ever got any IT question, Dan jumps in and helps out there too. So thank you for your support on that, and hope we get to work together in the future and support each other's businesses. And I really appreciate you coming in today. Do you have any final sort of tips or anything for anyone?
Probably the final thing, which we've already covered off, is just, as I tell my clients, just be diligent, take your time, especially in the current state that we're in with COVID and everything going on. You're getting pulled in so many different directions. You're not always paying the full amount of attention to what you might be doing. So always take that step back and just go, okay, I'm transferring money or I'm doing this. Just check, recheck, and check again is what I tell people to make sure, because I've met a lot of people that have lost a lot of money. The biggest one was $270,000, I think. as I tell everyone, most of the time you'll get that money back. It's not a question of if you'll get it back, it's when you'll get it back. So I've seen cases where people get their money back within a couple of weeks. I've seen one case where it took 6 months for the person to get their money back. So it's obviously not a position that you want to put yourself into.
No. And who's wearing the cost of that though? Who gets the money back? I'm guessing it's not coming back from the hacker. Is it, who?
Well, that is a great question. So the bank has to have their fraud squad investigate it, and then they follow the money. Now, I don't know where the money ends up coming back from, whether or not they can claw it back from the account, because obviously one would assume once it bounces to one account, it's going to then go offshore and offshore and offshore and move around, because that's how you launder money. But I did read an article recently that was saying that the credit card companies are actually in discussions to say that they won't continue to cover credit card fraud, so that if your card is actually breached and used, you'll be responsible for that money. The credit card companies are making too much of a loss covering stolen credit cards that they're going to put the responsibility and the onus back on the person who owns the card. And if you get done, they're not going to cover it, and you've got to make up paying that money. So
yeah, I mean, that makes sense from their point of view too, and I suppose that will make consumers a little bit, forced to be more aware and to take responsibility. You can't help it, all the time, but there are certain things that you can do. So I don't want everyone to be, totally scared or anything, but just be aware. Do a little bit of research as well, and there's lots of stories out there of bad things that have happened to people. I've got family and friends that say, well, I'm just never going to do any online banking, I'm never going to do anything, but you really can't avoid it now. Just because you don't do online banking doesn't mean that your bank account details can't be, or your card details can't be taken, or that your login details for your email can't be on the dark web. So, rather than just sort of stop doing everything, it's better to probably educate yourself and just be very wary of all the new things that are happening as well, I guess. So thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. If anyone's got any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to assist in any way we can.
Yeah, I reckon there'll be some people out there, and hopefully this creates a bit more discussion, and people can get in touch at any time. So thank you. Thanks to everyone for watching. And even if you're watching the replay, leave a comment and say hi, because it's nice to know that people are watching. Thanks, Dan. I'll chat to you later.
Righto, bye.
Okay, bye.